There we go. So just letting you know that. And then, so you should be able to see and hear us, the speakers and the panelists, and that we request you mute your mic throughout the duration of the presentation and panel discussion. You can choose to keep your cameras on. It would be really great for us to see all of your lovely faces. But however, if you'd like to turn off your camera, that's completely fine. In a moment, I'll go over a little bit more about how you can engage with us during this session. But before I go any further, I just wanted to take a moment to acknowledge that the First Nations Technology Council, in our work, we acknowledge that we work and we live on the unceded territories of the Coast Salish peoples. So this includes the Squamish, Tsleil-Waututh, and Musqueam nations. Then I would like to just take a moment to introduce our team here at the First Nations Technology Council. So, in the webinar today, joining us, we have some of our dedicated staff members who work directly with students. And internally, we have two divisions that are dedicated to the innovation and development of programming, and as well as supporting students in the pursuit of technology careers. So in the Indigenous Innovation and Development Division, we have Earl Einerson, who is the director of this division, and he's joining us here today. Sorry, I'll introduce myself first. I got a little bit ahead of myself there. So my name is Adrienne Larocque, and I'm the program coordinator for our Futures in Innovation and Technology programming here at the First Nations Technology Council. Normally I would be calling in from Vancouver, which is where I reside, but however, I'm calling in from Musqueam, Waskahigan, which is also known as Edmonton. So I'm currently calling in from Treaty 6 territory where I'm visiting my family. And then I'll just allow our team here to just introduce themselves. So we'll start with Earl.
Okay, but I think you've already introduced me. So I'm Earl. I'm the director of the Indigenous Innovation and Development. So what we do is we develop curriculum. So we take seriously what we do here, and we develop with Indigenous, an Indigenous paradigm and worldview, and andragogical theory, which is adult theory.
Thank you, Earl. Robin was not able to join us today, but she is the manager of our curriculum, and she works directly with all of our instructors. Jasmine, if you could introduce yourself.
Sure thing. So welcome everyone. My name is Jasmine. I'm the acting director of our Student Services and Partnership Development Division. I've been working at the Tech Council for almost 3 years now, and I'm so excited that we're starting to create more digital content here and opportunities for, our prospective students, current students, graduates, industry and community partners to be able to come together and engage with Indigenous innovators who are, both participating and leading in the tech and innovation sectors. So super excited for today. Thanks, Adrienne.
Thank you, Jasmine. And then we'll go over to Kim.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to the speaker series. My name is Kim Henderson. I'm the manager of Student Services and Partnerships over at the Tech Council. Today, I'm located on the traditional territory of Squamish Nation, but I'm originally from Yellowknife, Northwest Territories. I've been with the council just over 2 years now, working really closely in both divisions, just going over those logistical pieces of program delivery here at the province.
Thank you, Kim. Tirza.
Hello there. Hello to all of our previous and current foundation students. Nice to see your faces today. So I am Tirza. I am the Foundations Program Coordinator. So much like Adrienne, I am the first point of contact for our students, and I assist them through the admissions process and support them throughout the program as well. I just want to mention quickly that today I am located on Musqueam, which is the Treaty 6 territory in Alberta. Nice to have you all here.
Thank you, everyone. So we just have a quick note about Zoom. So our team at the First Nations Technology Council recognizes the importance of technology, and it's now becoming more important for Indigenous people to, be using technologies and be aware. And so all of our training programs that we have developed focus on preparing students with the technology skills necessary to succeed in the tech and innovation sectors. And so with our own virtual shifts to virtual classrooms, we've been using Zoom as one of our main video conferencing tools, and it's the tool that we'll be using here today. I just wanted to make a couple notes about how you can engage with us over the presentation. So even though you may be on mute, you can definitely engage with us by using the chat function. So Tirza will be monitoring the chat function and will be answering any questions throughout the presentation. However, I just wanted to note that at the end of the presentation, we will be giving anyone an opportunity who would like to ask questions to our panelists here to do so live. And so I just, one of the things that we do recommend is if you would like to take this moment to rename yourself, you can click the 3 dots in the top right-hand corner of your little square there, and you can rename yourself so we can see who you are. So for what you can expect today, I'm just going to give a brief organizational background. Then we'll give our alumni panelists an opportunity to speak a bit about their experience in our training programs and what they're doing today. And then we'll also have an industry panel discussion following that, leading into a live Q&A where you'll have an opportunity to ask the questions that I'm sure many of you have. And then we'll speak briefly about next steps and how to start your application. So with the First Nations Technology Council is an Indigenous-led not-for-profit organization that works towards equitable access to technology in BC for Indigenous communities. We believe that Indigenous peoples are the original innovators on these lands where the technology sector is currently thriving, and we work under these mandates that are listed here to ultimately advance sovereignty for Indigenous communities in the digital age. While there are numerous initiatives at the Technology Council, today we're focusing on one of our specific training areas, which is web development. And so we have an opportunity today to hear directly from Indigenous subject matter experts and recent graduates about their own journeys that they've embarked on. So with that being said, we have a comprehensive pathway for Indigenous people to take our training programs and enter into the technology sector. We started with Foundations in Innovation and Technology and Futures in Innovation and Technology. So Foundations is our exploratory program that introduces students to 6 different tech skill pathways. And then Futures is our advanced career-oriented programming where students can choose to specialize in any one area, which includes UX and UI design, web development, digital marketing, data science and data analytics, GIS and GPS mapping. And then we recently added Focus, which is our intermediate training level program that's designed for Indigenous students who want to deepen their knowledge of web development and programming using JavaScript. So this is one of our newest programs. It's a 6-week program. And so I just wanted to give you a bit of an overview of our initiatives, just so you have an understanding of the programs that we offer here, and the different pathways that students can undertake when they are coming to the Technology Council for training. And so with that, I just wanted to give a brief overview, but I would love to just hand it over now and just kind of dive right into our panelists and hear directly from them about their experiences. And so I'd like to start off by just providing our alumni a moment to just kind of introduce themselves. And so we'll start with Sarah Fox.
Hey everybody, my name is Sarah Fox. I'm Métis. My family's from Southern Alberta. I grew up on Vancouver Island, but moved to Vancouver like 10 years ago to go to university. And I went to Red Academy, where I studied front-end web development.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Sarah. And Lance, would you be able to introduce yourself as well? I'll just...
Yeah. Hi, I'm Lance. Diddy Dot. I did their web development and their app dev course at Red Academy. I also did their previous course, which I can't remember the name. Is it FIT?
Yep.
Yeah.
Got it.
I always get it wrong with the other one. Yeah. So I did 3 programs and yeah.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And then, so I guess what would make sense is I will also just have our industry alumni introduce themselves briefly now, and then we'll go back to Sarah and Lance, and I have some specific questions for you. Megan, if you could please introduce yourself.
Tansi, Megan Bernasika-san, Aptawako Sisan, Hamilton, Ontario, Newton. Hi, I'm Megan Byrne. I am Aptawako Sisan, or British Cree Métis from Ontario, and I am the owner and lead designer of Atmos Dawastan Games, which is an Indigenous owned and majority staffed indie game studio out of Ontario. So that's what I do. A lot of other stuff too, but mostly that.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Megan. And then we'll go over to Dega. Oh, I don't hear him.
Got it.
Okay, there we go.
What konordad no zoguego de gatitsa nega ne yojats gehaga ganawa gerdono ni dawaganyo dano waskardewa so skohovane wakiterdota. So good afternoon. We're in afternoon now. My name is Dagat Tsitsanega Everest. I hail from the Mohawk Nation of Gutnawaga. I'm a proud member from our Bear Clan, specifically from our Soskohowane bloodline. And I am the co-founder and president of Interconnect Canada.
Great. Thank you so much, Dega. So I'd like to start off by just asking the alumni panelists a few questions. And so, one of the first questions that I have is, you've already introduced yourselves, which so we have a little bit of an understanding of where you're from. I'd like to open it up to give Sarah and Lance just an opportunity to talk about what interested you about web development as your chosen career path or field of specialization. Yeah, and if you could just talk a little bit more about why you decided to focus on this area of study.
Yeah, absolutely. So I originally kind of worked a lot in the film industry. So I did a lot of video editing and audio editing. And I realized I like working with computers. And I was like, between contracts, when I did I worked for a lot of APTN shows, I would do websites for people and logos and stuff, but never very in depth. Like I didn't do coding. So I just did a lot of Squarespace and Wix and stuff. And so when I learned about this program, I thought I could kind of really, juice up what I can do if I learned how to code and did like more front end stuff as opposed to just like drag and drop. So that was what really interested me. I'd already done a little bit of it, but I wanted to learn more.
That's great. Thank you, Sarah. Lance, what interested you about web development and app development?
Oh, yeah. I was kind of sick of the career path I was going through. Like I was doing like construction and stuff like that. I did graphical arts on the side, but I wasn't really enjoying it because it didn't seem like it had I wasn't like getting better at my job or anything. I was just making the same amount of money, blah, blah, blah. But with like technology courses, you seem to improve, you get more money, more each, like, I don't know. Yeah, I don't know. It's hard to explain, but
yeah, no, that's
seems
great.
like there's more opportunity each like career path I take. Like web dev or app dev, I'm like getting more and more further, and you just keep learning, which is nice.
Yeah, that's really great. You spent some time, both of you spent some time studying back when we were still doing in-person classes. Yeah. I'm wondering if there is anything that you wish you knew or that someone had told you before you took the course. I can start with Sarah.
Yeah, sure. By the way, we went to the same class, me and Lance. It was really, really fun. It was like right before COVID. And so it was like, we really, squeezed in there. I think before I took the course, my biggest thing is I was kind of deciding between whether or not to do a front end and back end program. And I hadn't been to school in like 10 years. And so I was like, you know what, I should probably just, do just front end. But after the program, I realized that I probably would have enjoyed doing both at the same time, even if it was like more intense. And a big part of that was the First Nations Tech Council actually like making it possible for me to do this course and not have a job on the side, like kind of try to work kind of part or full time while I was doing the program. And so I think really being realistic to yourself, being like, how much time do I have? When am I, when am I willing to really put into the program and stuff like that? But yeah, I think I would have, if I did it again, done a little more intense of a course.
Great. Thank you, Sarah. And what about you, Lance?
For myself, like just jumping into coding, it was pretty difficult. So I had to like, from not like going to school and stuff, I had to like really allocate my hours like properly from doing that. And especially in app dev where everything kind of like ramped up, where I went from just doing JavaScript and I'm slowly doing React and all these other things. Yeah, so it's definitely how to allocate your hours properly and like put the additional hours in after.
Yeah, I remember one time visiting Red Academy campus, and the one thing that I remember is Lance always being on the couch working like very late, long hours studying. Yeah, so there's a lot of time and long hours that go into that. I'm wondering if either of you can offer any advice for others who might be considering taking a web development program. You know, why should potential students consider you know, learning with the Technology Council as well?
I think like advice-wise, there's so many online resources to kind of like dip your foot into it before you start with like a really intense program. And so looking into that first would probably be a really good first step because Code Academy is free and online. That's what I learned a lot from. But I mean, it's just like there's really no downside to learning a new career, especially in the tech industry. It's just like it's growing. It's a super, super solid place to start working. And if you're interested in what you're doing, it can be like an amazing career choice. And so I think it's definitely something to explore because there's so many different facets to it. You don't just have to be sitting behind a computer, like not talking to anybody, typing all the time. There's just so many different things you can do. And so I think learning about tech is one of the coolest things you can do nowadays.
So great.
Yeah, like under the same thing, like the career-wise, I remember we had that interview with Slack, or the meeting with Slack, and some people started along the path of coding, and then they switched. They're in the same company, but they just switch. Like, it's not my thing. But they're still in the technology field and getting paid really well. So it's nice that you can go down one path and still end up, you know, at the same place in this field.
Yeah. That's so great. I think it's so great to hear that there really is no downside to working in any area of technology. It sounds like both of you have seen through your programs that there is a lot of different pathways that you can go down once you're in it, right? Once you get that foot in the door. Thank you so much. We will have some more questions for each of you, but now I'd like to go, forward and give our industry partners an opportunity to speak. And so I wanted to just go to Megan. So Megan is the owner and project leader of Achimawastanow Games. And so while our programs center around web development here at the First Nations Technology Council, we know that some of our students see web development as a jumping off point to dive into deeper programming, such as software development. And, we hear from many students that they're interested in gaming. So for this reason, we're so happy to have you here today, Megan, to kind of speak about your experience. So I will just kind of hand it over to you. We'd love to just hear from you about your journey and how you got to where you are today.
Sure. Actually, did you want me to, I can share a little slide thing if you want.
Sure, I can do that. So I will just quickly make you Okay, you should be able to do that now. Okay. There you go.
Yay. All right. And then it does the thing where it makes everything disappear on me again. Yeah, so we are Achimawastanow Games, or if that's too hard for a lot of non-Indigenous speakers, Achimo Games. And our entire mandate is to create original Indigenous content by Indigenous creators, for everybody. I have to say that part. So this is our design team. This is like a small slice of who we've got on the team. So we have myself, we have Sarajonas, who is Mohawk Mexican Indigenous and actually lives in the States. We have Gabby Campazos, who's our lead programmer. She's not Indigenous, but she is Japanese Korean from Brazil, so has a lot of life experience. And then Taylor MacArthur, which actually some of you may know MacArthur because they're like a huge family in Manitoba. And so like that's our core team, and that sort of was really awesome because we were able to create games that actually spoke from a majority Cree perspective. We actually even have more staff, which I don't have listed here, who are also Métis Cree. And so this has been a really awesome experience, just being able to have a majority Indigenous team to create video games. My background started in theater as a set and lighting designer, and then I moved into event planning, and then I moved into game design and programming. And when I was working, a lot of times people were very interested in like, oh, I'd really like to throw that like Indigenous aesthetic on stuff, but I was usually the only Indigenous person in the room. And then later when I started working in gamification and edutainment and children's educational games, it was again the same thing where they wanted representation, but I was the only Indigenous person in the room, and it was very hard to kind of like get across certain nuances. So this has been an absolutely amazing experience, just working with a majority Indigenous team where we don't have to explain a lot of those things, where it's just understood why we're doing things the way we are. So we also take an intergenerational approach. So we have developed cultural protocols that we follow for our company. That's internal and external. One of the things that we do want to do as a company is not just make video games. We want to be a resource for communities, Indigenous communities that want to do technical, like they either want to do something software-based, VR, AI, or just a video game. But currently, usually they have to work with a settler company, and that's usually their only option. So what happened when I was a little bit younger was I would be brought on as almost like a cultural tech translator, where people would be like, well, we have this Indigenous group and they don't understand the tech, and then we have this tech group and they don't understand this Indigenous culture. Can you kind of like merge that gap? And like the more I talked with both groups, the more I found that there was just like, without having Indigenous people making the tech and like doing the coding, you're always going to have that almost language barrier in terms of like creating. So one of my big things is that we want to make sure that we can work with Indigenous people the way they want to be worked with, and that we can at least help develop their projects in a way that is good and not harmful. And so that's why we have protocols. We also have a council of Indigenous creatives that we work with, who sort of vet a lot of our projects before they even go out to the public. And we also are really big on building up the next generation of Indigenous video game creators. So a couple things that I do outside of my company is I'm one of the leads for the Indigenous Game Devs, which is a collective, a group of Indigenous game developers from across the world. It's both digital, and also we have a lot of people who do tabletop, so it doesn't have to be digital. We do pen and paper and stuff like that. And so this is our Indigenous Advisory Council, Elizabeth Ponce. I don't know if you know about her, but she's Anishinaabe, Métis, and she's actually quite famous for two recent games. One is Thunderbird Strikes, where you play as a Thunderbird that gets to either raise animals from the dead or destroy oil production equipment, and actually she was labeled an eco-terrorist for creating this lovely game, so definitely check that out. And she's also the lead designer for Where Rivers Were Trails, which is about the displacement of the Anishinaabe in the States. Alan Turner is Black Lakota, and he has been working in video games since, oh my god, I think like 1979. He's worked for a bunch of companies that don't even exist anymore. He did stuff for Disney, he's done stuff for EA, and he actually is a really amazing guy who I think 3 years ago put out a tabletop game called Etragor, which is an Indigenous role-playing game. So I really recommend that. Janelle Papasuquanis, I think she's recently moved out of games, but she was running a sort of an Indigenous board game company out of out of Saskatchewan. And Jay Odick, who is just an amazing guy. I can't remember which nation he is, but he's like primarily a writer and a artist. And so we have this like well-rounded Indigenous Advisory Council. And then part of our next gen team is the Lightning Sisters, who are our art and our narrative intern. And then we're also looking to grow our team with a programming intern. So yeah, that's basically us in a nutshell. Well, how do I stop sharing? There we go. Yeah, and so one of the things that we do is we work with pre-developed software for like game engine software. So a lot of it doesn't require too much insane coding. However, if you're using something like Unity, then it requires either JavaScript or C++, or C# rather. C# is actually a little bit more flexible and more useful than JavaScript once you start getting into like very difficult nuanced programming. And then for the other engine that we're using, which is the Unreal Engine, which you probably have seen is like absolutely gorgeous, that's they use a blueprint system, which is fantastic if you just understand like programming logic, because then at that point it's sort of a what do we call it, visual scripting, plug and play. It actually will like you can just like pick the items and then connect them to each other. It's kind of like Scratch, but like way more nuanced. And then if you want to go another level deeper than that, then you need to know C++, which is what I know on top of C#. And I've been working using both those coding language. Well, I guess they're technically one language, but I've been using that language for about 5 years now. But I definitely prefer using blueprints. So one of the things that we'll do at our companies, because we know that there's a lot of talent out there that's indigenous, but not necessarily that has the skill set to work in video games, is we just look for the raw talent. So like, do you know how to program? Are you an artist? Do you just know how to 3D model? Do you know how to animate? Those sort of like things we can't teach. And then we build up the knowledge base of how to work in these engines and how to develop games. What I did with our intern over this year was I ran a 6-week course with her where I was teaching her just like how do you develop mechanics, but also how do you develop mechanics as a narrative designer. So one of the things that I tell people is that I'm actually a narrative mechanics designer, because it's very important to me that our games tell stories and that we tell stories through the mechanics that we're using. And one of the things that I've always been telling people when I teach game design is that one of the amazing things about mechanics, especially in interactive games, is that we can often talk about things that are too difficult to say in a way that is not appropriative, that is not exploitative. So like a good example is my very first solo piece, Wani Sinawin Lost, where I was talking about the fact that, you know, I felt very disconnected from my community because that had been closed off to me because of the decisions of my grandmother and my great-grandmother. And so I did a piece on that, and it was very hard when people were like, well, what's it about? I'm like, I really can't talk about it. Can you play it? And then people would play it, and it was just like a platformer where you kind of had no choice but go forward, and you got lost, and you had to go through darkness, and was very claustrophobic, and you just had to deal with things around you and use what you had. And people were like, they didn't get it in terms of like, I fully understand your experience, but they understood that they didn't understand, and yet they also understood that there was something there that they were grasping. And interestingly enough, the group that most connected with it were girls who had been Chinese babies that had been adopted and taken over to Canada when there was that mass scoop in the 80s and 90s of Chinese female infants that were brought to Canada. And in fact, they said that they most connected with that because they felt the exact same way about like not having that connection, but looking a certain way and being expected to act a certain way, but not having that connection to culture. So that's why I say like video games and mechanics are a really amazing way for us to start talking about things that are like really hard and probably also very closed off to particular communities that shouldn't be just accessible to everyone. And so with a mechanic, you can kind of have that experience and not explain what that experience is, and your community members will understand it, whereas somebody coming from the outside will be like, oh, that was pretty, that was nice music, and you're like, thank you, that's, yeah.
Thank you so much, Megan. I saw a lot of nodding heads when you were talking about the programming languages that you use. So, you know, many of the people who are on the call today are actually current or previous web development students. So I'm sure you're striking a chord with all of them. Thank you so much for that. I'd like to go over to Dega next, just to speak a little bit more. You are the co-founder of Interconnect Canada, which is an Indigenous owned and operated technology services company. So I will just hand it off to you now. If you'd like to share a little bit more about your story with us. Yeah. Did you?
Yeah, sure. I can actually share a little bit of a slide as well.
All right, great.
Just a second.
Yeah. I will just set that up for you.
I think we're good.
Oh, you're good. Okay, great.
Awesome. Yeah. So again, my name is Dega Tsitsanega Everest, short Dega. And I am the president and co-founder of Interconnect Canada. And so this company had been brought together last year. Actually, the majority of my work has always been in kind of combination of arts and community capacity building. And so I actually attended the Institute of American Indian Art in Santa Fe, New Mexico. And then, so my community, I come from Kahnawake, and that was kind of the core central to the Oka crisis of 1990. So if none of you know about it, Google it, research it. It's critical information about Indigenous sovereignty. And so a lot of my work has always focused on economic development and socio-cultural development. And so as a consultant to that work, I was approached by two individuals and asked to support the development of a company, an IT company, that was going to focus on supporting the marginalized communities, Indigenous and BIPOC, within the tech sector. And so currently, I believe there's within IT, there's less than 1% representation in that space, and it's a multi-billion-dollar industry. And so we decided to come together, and I was immediately asked to be partner on there. And that development, the agreement upon that work was that this would be an Indigenous owned and operated company, and that we would focus on supporting Indigenous talent through there. And so let's see if I can get to this. So our focus had been on increasing participation with Indigenous peoples and communities, really focusing on like a business to business in within Indigenous communities, and specifically with the development of, so if you think about any community that is think about your community and think about a development that was going to happen, a new school, a new band council, a new whatever. There's obviously, several planning initiatives that go through that, and without a doubt, quite a handsome purse of funds that have to be dedicated to that work. Now, with Indigenous communities, that IT work, so any type of, from breaking ground to the last install, or what we call last mile, there requires IT in there. And the majority of time, on a tier 1 to tier 3 level, the funds dedicated to get those IT infrastructure in place is often, or if, up to this point, is often going out to a non-Indigenous company who has really no connection to the community and really no engagement with the community beyond a contract. And so we decided that we wanted to support our communities to get into that space and really focus on developing, partnering with organizations, partnering with educational institutions to generate a stronger pool of technology experts. So whether you are going into, web development, whether you're going into architecture, web architecture, computer science, those jobs within those communities or that those contracts, if you will, remain in the community, and it gives the opportunity for our community members to seek and obtain those jobs, and most importantly, be able to be at competitive levels. So a lot of times, I mean, with a lot of Indigenous community members, we leave our community because those jobs aren't there. They're not competitive. They're not the same salary, and so our focus is to ensure that those communities get keep that funding in the community. And really the goal of that is to do a handshake to handoff model, where we engage with those communities, identify what IT opportunities are there, and work with those the nations or communities to develop that long term. And the goal of that is for Interconnect Canada to remove ourselves from that space, and those jobs be there and managed by community members or by the community themselves. Some of the critical pieces. So I have quite an extensive background in federal and provincial negotiations and regional development, and so being at the negotiations table and really knowing that, you know, UN Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous People, TRC, traditional governance and nation law, isn't brought to surface, or it's met at what is typically called you know, the minimal standards. And so the work that we do and how we engage and how we work with communities is adhering directly to the traditional law and governance of that territory, of that community, working with business to business to develop not only the relationship between the business, but the relationship to the community, relationship to the land, and acknowledging that, I mean, we all have those, the historical economic mistrust, or, you know, our nations have been taken advantage of, and continue to this day. So one of the critical pieces about Interconnect is we take all of these as our guiding principles, and they move directly into the business relationship that we have, and we ensure that we challenge opportunities, especially with partners who are outside. We challenge them to raise those standards and adhere directly to these guiding principles, as this is, for us, this is common knowledge, right? And so one of the key pieces about Interconnect is, let's say if we were to do a business or sign a contract on TACLA territory, right? Whether that is engaging with the nation or not, if that contract is done within TACLA territory, one of the critical pieces when I came on as president of this is our net profit. So after everyone has been paid all the contracts and so on and so forth, there's, you know, our founders, you know, our last net profit. There's 3 founders, Rohan, Desi, and I, and they wanted to do a 3-way split of that final net profit. And I said, under one circumstance, we create a 4th. So we split it 25, 25, 25, and 25. And so they said, well, where's the other 25 going? And I said, that's going directly to the community, regardless of whether we're engaged with them or not. So, you know, ideally you want to build that relationship, but if the relationship isn't there, we're still going to knock on the door and say, hey, listen, we did sign a contract, and with our practices, before we enter into any contract, we reach out to a community and say, listen, this is who we are. I, as Haudenosaunee, have been directed, you know, we follow very strongly to our traditional protocols. And so even coming on to Squamish, Musqueam, and Tsleil-Waututh territory, I was instructed by our clan mother to reach out to the nation and inform that we are here. I am here, and I have a responsibility to adhere to your protocols. So in the same respect, that 25% goes back to the nation, whether they are to invest in Interconnect, invest in a partnership opportunity, or invest in, you know, local talent getting into IT sector. or at the end of the day, if they're like, no, actually, we're just going to take that. For us, we call that, utilizing technology and profit towards self-determination of the community and nation. And that is a critical piece in what we do. And so really, again, where our focus remains with my partners. Both Rohan and Desi have extensive, I would say about 40 years track record in IT. Rohan, for example, is leading the Lululemon international expansion to Japan as the cloud development leader, and Desi is actually set up some pretty extensive work around, I believe it's First Nation or a PHSA, so Public Health Authorities, has set up the whole web development and the background of the infrastructure of that work. So they both come, and from Shaw Cable as well. And so they come from an extensive track record of Fortune 500 companies. And really what we are focusing on with Interconnect in this place is to come in, adhere to the traditional protocols, and create a new way of business that includes community from the get-go, includes all the traditional practices, to adhere to respectful engagement, not just a typical partnership engagement and adhering to different policy. And again, within IT, it goes from tier 1 to tier 3. So tier 1 would be an individual who has the ability to, run cable. You often see, TELUS Shaw installers. That would be, a tier 1 capability. Tier 3 is walking onto a new development of, a building and being able to create an entire work plan, architecture, and the groundwork to develop that from the get-go. So Interconnect is, I'm going to go out on a limb here and say Interconnect is the only Indigenous-owned company that has tier 3 capability. And we're not a mom and pop shop. We are currently engaged in some pretty major initiatives throughout Canada and United States on supporting these IT developments. And so really where our focus is ensuring that we bring, I like the way Rohan, our vice president, said it very beautifully. Interconnect technology, or Interconnect Canada rather, is a juggernaut of what it means to be Indigenous and empower and support our communities to empower themselves, and utilizing technology as a new way of doing business that is really adheres to traditional ways of practice, that we don't leave community behind, and reciprocity and responsibility to the community is at the forefront of everything we do. And so we identify ourselves as a juggernaut in this industry because we're up against some of the biggest names in technology, and at the same time we remain absolutely connected and focused on ensuring communities have that opportunity to get into business however they are going to. So yeah. Please tell me I wasn't muted the whole time.
No, you weren't.
Okay, good.
Thank you so much. Thanks. I'd like to give Earl, our director, a moment to just kind of speak. He was really involved, like he works in curriculum for the first, it develops curriculum and programming. And so I think it would be really great for you, Earl, to just speak a little bit about the importance of indigenizing technology curriculum and just share a little bit more about your role here, I guess.
Sure. Yeah, thank you. It's nice to see everybody. I recognize some faces. It's nice to see people here. And Lance, hello. Lance was that was my last face-to-face, I think. It was in that, Lance was in our class in foundations. So it's nice to see people moving forward and through the pathways that we've created. Foundations, as you know, is kind of where you start. And then we have what's called focus. And then from focus, it goes to futures. Those are 3 groupings. The piece that I wrote just recently, and I wrote this curriculum specifically myself, was focus. We're just launching that right now. What that is, it's a creation of filling a gap between foundations and futures. What we saw was that people came into our foundations programs, and as you know, that's 6 weeks, 2 weeks apiece, so you get a taste of different areas, web dev being one of those. So 2 weeks in web dev. And again, I was part of the initial creation of that and the iterations that we take on board. And I want you to know that everything we do is grounded in Indigenous thought and paradigms. And to begin, and I apologize for not introducing myself where I'm from. I'm Tanaha, Aquamat Tanaha, which is up near Columbia River Basin. People like to say the English word Cranbrook. I don't. I'm from a river up country. So what's important for us is that we build an Indigenous point of view, an Indigenous paradigm into all our work. My studies, my master's is in andragogical theory and online learning, which is adult learning online. Enough, I started that before COVID. It's kind of what I've done with many of my papers is that I take these andragogical learning theories. So there's many theories out there, many frameworks are called, and I work with these academic pieces and I frame it to an Indigenous point of view. That's mostly been my studies and my work. So we bring all that knowledge directly into what we create here. It's really important for us to ground in andragogical theory, and why I say that is that pedagogical theory is K to 12. So you've heard pedi as in pediatrics, so it means children, basically. So K to 12 is pedi, and then andragogical is adult. So in post-secondary, it's really adult learning theory. And it's been around since the 40s, but it has really been, really come to the forefront lately because of this new Zoom influence kind of virtual classroom of ours. Many people teach from a pedagogical point of view. I see it all the time. I taught BCIT for 8 years in tech. So I was listening to Megan and I was smiling to myself. When I began at BCIT, literally in the first 2 months, we had to write assembly code, which is before C, and it was like ridiculous. And I think I always thought, looking back on that, I think the reason why they started there is to basically see if you could handle that. And if you to work to that, okay, you'll probably take on C and C++ and C# and all the C-oriented pieces. So assembly language was like a hurdle just to test your mettle, because it's ridiculous. It's a stream of zeros and ones and just a stream. There's no anglicized words. It's all like in code, in actual numeric. It's ridiculous. And it's all different for every single computer. Every single computer is different assembly language. So you have to write for a specific type of computer and a chip's and that's. Anyway, after that, we went on to C. C is the base language. There's K and RC, everybody kind of knows about, and K and RC is kind of the base language of C. Everything's built off of that. There's this thing called objectification, where object-oriented languages came into vogue. So C++ came into vogue, which took C and packaged it into what are called objects. And then from there, it's gone on the functional. So functional has become kind of the big terminology in programming now, where we do, instead of imperative languages where you kind of spell out what you're doing, and functional is you ask it to solve something and it does. It's a step towards AI and VR and all those pieces. It's kind of cool. And what I heard about Blueprint and what I've seen about Blueprint, it's working with that kind of paradigm. So it's not about, okay, I got to remember this syntax. I got to remember that comma goes here and where's that semicolon, and I got to remember to close that bracket and all that. Instead of that, we move away from into, I want the computer to do this for me, which is what functional programming is. And that's where we're moving. In all of this, I outline all this because that's my thought pattern when I created Focus. I was very focused on trying to build the actual pathway towards that without jumping past imperative or iterative typing. That means do this line, then the computer does this line, And we move to looping, do this line, jump back and do those lines again, so loops. And now, and then object oriented. So I built all of this stuff into whether you know or not, as you take it, you're learning that stuff. I've built it in the bedrocks of it, but I haven't skipped over how to ramp up easy. Everything we do, we try to ramp. We try not to make, when I went to BCIT, literally it was like you walk in the door and then boom, you got 500 feet and everybody's like, right? And drinking too much coffee and complaining about instructors and, you know, everything, but it's ridiculous. It's like jumping in the deepest part of the pool. And I thought, yeah, that's not the way to teach. So we really are very sure of our ramp. I'm very iterative in terms of my ramp. All the ramps and all our programs are built that way. And we wanted to ensure there's a ramp between foundations and external pieces, which you might go on to in futures. And so that's, so if you're interested in web dev, there's a really nice quality ramp so it doesn't leave people behind. My thought pattern, because I've taught for 27 years in adult education, is that I know it's easy to lose a class. It's easy to lose, or let's put it this way, 80% of your class gets it and 20 are left kind of going, complaining about me, right? And that's, to me, that's a poor instructor or poor instruction. It's about taking the whole class. 100% of you have to come along for the path. And so you need to create ramps which are appropriate for that. And because I knew all that, I taught for years and I thought, okay, I need to actually build this into curriculum. So I went and got my master's in this. So I know exactly what I'm doing. It's not guesswork. It's built on pure real learning theories, which have been proven out on a lot of studies and a lot of work, and indigenous thought. Everything we do is put into that. That's where I'm from. That's where my walk in this physical world. I live in a spiritual world also, but my walk in this physical world is informed directly by my thoughts of indigenous patterns, and I'm proud of that. And I bring that to the classroom, and I bring it to our curriculum. So we work really hard as a team. I'm saying me a lot, but really there's a team, of course, right? There's a full team that does this. I'm just talking focus. I created myself. Team creates all of these pieces. So we're really proud of our work. I'm really aware of time. I'm looking at time. I could go on like hours because programming is fun. It's like the most legal fun I can have is when I start to sit down and I program. I mean, it's just incredible what you can create and where it takes you in this world. So it was great to hear from Tekka and from Megan. That was, they're working in the field, and I ran a business too, by the way. That's how I got teaching at BCIT. Took the program, and as I took the program, I created an online business, and it was really successful. I was going to leave and go make some money, but the associate dean saw it and he says, hey, you should teach her. And I ended one term and started teaching the next term. So that's how I started teaching. Anyway, it's great having everybody here. I really wish you the best in your journey. It's a really interesting pathway. You have to be involved with tech.
Thank you, Earl. So I'm really aware of time, and I know some of you do have to return to class. So if you wanted to type your questions in the chat box, we are recording this session and we can get to some of those in the next few minutes. I think we can, I believe everyone's available for a few more minutes. So now I'd just like to take the opportunity to open up for questions. And the questions can be directed at either our alumni or our industry reps here as well.
And just to
go ahead.
Your fears, if you're going back into one of our classrooms, I'll write you down.
Okay, is there anyone that has a question for either Lance or Sarah or industry representatives that they'd like to ask?
Hi everyone, Oki Nistu Anago Piksibidaki. I'm Andrea Fox, and I have recently launched my podcast, Talks with a Fox podcast. I'm from the Blackfoot territory here in Alberta. And first of all, I just want to say thank you to Kim for connecting me to this really insightful and inspiring speaker series. And the purpose of me joining today was to just learn more about the company, as well as network and connect with some alumni or current students. We are looking at further expanding what we do as a company, a media and production consulting company. And I'm specifically interested in connecting with web developers and marketers, or anybody who has some background in that and who would be interested in connecting with me further on that. So I just wanted to introduce myself. You can tune into my podcast. It's available on all podcast platforms. And there I talk with all sorts of really interesting and inspiring Indigenous people from across Turtle Island. So yeah, hello everybody.
Hello, thank you. Thank you for joining us.
Yes, so if there's anybody who is interested in connecting with me, I have my contact information with Kim. Hi, Kim, by the way, it's nice to put a face to a voice. And, you know, we can connect further. I do get contracts, and so that's what I'm looking at. Also, as I build my company, I would prefer to, you know, hire and employ Indigenous experts in the field that you are all working in.
Perfect. Thanks so much for sharing, Andrea, and welcome. I'm happy you're here today. So yeah, just a word to any of the alumni. If you're open to any opportunities or any, you know, job opportunities for you in the future after graduation, make sure to touch base with Adrian, and we can do our best in trying to align you with something that like what Andrea shared today.
Thank you. Thanks, Kim. Is there anyone from the focus class that had a question before they have to head out?
I think most of them left already.
I see see Brandon. Yep, Brandon.
So, Tekka, you guys mostly deal with web infrastructure like fiber optics and stuff like that? Is that what you guys deal with?
No, we actually are full service. So we do pretty much anything within IT and technology in the creation of that in a space, right down to service and management of that. We pretty much host some of. I could give you an example. Right now, we're actually in an RFP with the Veteran Services Canada to do a major rehaul to their online services. So I believe it's 70,000 veterans in Canada that engage with this online platform for their medical, their retirement, you know, pension, so on and so forth. So we're working with Maurice Chappelle and some other, you know, some organizations in this group, along with Oracle, to submit a new, create a brand new platform for this, for I guess over the next 10 years. So, you know, within web development is a huge piece of what we do. That's more on the, you know, the completed side of it. So, yeah, we're kind of along the whole spectrum. I look like I'm a mime.
Adrian, I just wanted to thank you for inviting me in. I have a meeting here at 1 o'clock, but thanks very much, everyone. It's great to see everyone.
Thank you so much, Earl. Yeah, I think, you know, I do want to respect everyone's time here. And so I just wanted to thank each of our alumni panelists and our Indigenous subject matter experts for joining us today. It's been really great to hear from each one of you about the work that you're doing and, you know, the various roles that you play in the tech industry. You know, if anyone has any questions or would like to apply to our programs, you can definitely head over to our website, or you can reach out to me directly. I do have a quick little slide that I can share with you just for my contact information. So let's see. If you are interested, you know, you can definitely go over to our website and fill out an inquiry form. That's probably one of the quickest way to reach out to myself or Tirza, which is a program coordinator. And then you can reach out to us by email or by visiting our website to find out the most up-to-date information. Okay, so with that, I'd just like to thank everybody for joining us, for sharing your time with us today. We really appreciate having you all here. And I just wanted to close off by saying, you know, please stay in touch with all of us. If you have any questions, you can reach out to me directly. And for more information, just check out our website and follow us on social media. I hope you all have a wonderful day. And yeah, we'll be in touch soon. Thank you so much for joining us.
Bye. Have a good day.
Yeah, thank you. Bye.
Bye.